The city never truly slept. Even at 2 in the morning, lights flickered behind skyscraper windows, neon signs hummed faintly, and the occasional car sliced through empty streets like a blade. Ethan Vale, CEO of Vale Global, adjusted his cufflinks as he stepped out of the sleek black car. His tailored suit was impeccable, as always, and the weight of responsibility pressed lightly on his broad shoulders. Confidential meetings, confidential deals. This was his world. And tonight, he had one that could make or break his company. Unseen in the shadows, Mira Cole followed. Her heels made no sound on the pavement, and her eyes, sharp and calculating, tracked him with every step. Assigned by the agency, her mission was clear: protect Vale at all costs. But tonight, she found herself drawn not only to his danger, but to the man himself. Vale didn't glance at the shadows behind him, yet Mira felt his presence like a magnet. There was something magnetic about him, something compelling beyond his confidence and stature. She shook her head slightly, reminding herself, this was a mission, nothing more. As he entered a dimly lit lounge tucked between skyscrapers, Mira followed at a careful distance. The place smelled faintly of leather and coffee, the low murmur of the few patrons blending with soft jazz music. Vale moved with ease, commanding attention without raising his voice, nodding politely at acquaintances, exchanging brief handshakes that hinted at unspoken agreements. Mira watched, cataloging every interaction, every possible threat. Her mind ran through contingencies, escape routes and angles of attack, but every now and then, her gaze drifted to him, and she felt her pulse quicken. Vale paused by the bar, ordering a coffee. A faint smile played on his lips, as if he sensed her there. She froze. "Is someone watching me?" he asked softly, not looking in her direction. Mira ducked behind a column, heart pounding. "No," she told herself. "Not yet. Don't blow your cover." He took his coffee and moved toward a private elevator at the back of the lounge. Mira followed, her breath steady, every step calculated. As the elevator doors closed, she waited outside, watching the reflection of the city lights shimmer on the polished metal. When the elevator reappeared at the top floor, Vale stepped out, walking into a corridor bathed in soft, golden light. Mira kept her distance but stayed close enough to react to any threat. Her instincts screamed that danger could appear at any moment. But more than that, her instincts were screaming about him, about the tension crackling in the air whenever he was near. He paused at a glass-walled office overlooking the city. Leaning on the railing, he stared out into the night, coffee in hand, thoughtful. Mira crouched behind a planter, hidden but able to see him clearly. For a brief moment, she let her professional mask slip. She admired the way the city reflected in his eyes, the calm confidence in his posture. The man in front of her was dangerous in more ways than one, not just to rivals, but to her carefully constructed emotional walls. A sudden noise startled her, a creak in the corridor. Mira's hand went to her holster instinctively. Vale's head turned sharply, his eyes scanning the shadows. "Relax," she whispered to herself, trying to calm the rush of adrenaline. But he wasn't looking at her. He was looking at something else. Something, or someone, was in the room. Mira's heart pounded in her chest as she crouched behind the planter. The noise had stopped, but the sense of intrusion lingered in the air. Shadows shifted across the office floor, stretching unnaturally under the city lights. Vale remained calm, sipping his coffee, eyes still scanning the dark corners. He had that unnerving composure, the kind of calm that made her stomach twist, equal parts admiration and unease. Then it happened. A figure stepped from the shadows, sleek and deliberate. A man in a dark coat, his hands empty but his presence threatening. Mira's instincts screamed threat detected. Vale turned slowly toward the intruder. "I don't know who you are, but I suggest you leave," he said smoothly, voice calm yet edged with authority. The man smirked. "I don't take suggestions." Mira's fingers itched for her sidearm, but she hesitated. This was Vale's domain, and her orders were clear. Do not reveal yourself unless absolutely necessary. The intruder advanced. Vale took a slow step forward, his body language poised, confident. Mira's pulse raced. He wasn't just a CEO. He moved with the precision of a trained operative, the kind of efficiency that sent shivers down her spine. Before she could make a move, Vale suddenly shifted. In one fluid motion, he intercepted the man's arm, twisting it behind his back with controlled force, and pushed him toward the wall. The man grunted in surprise. Mira's jaw dropped. He's not just a CEO. He's trained. Vale didn't hesitate. Leave. Now, he repeated, his voice low, lethal. The man struggled, but Vale's grip was iron. Mira finally stepped forward, weapon drawn. Her presence revealed in the soft glow of the office lights. Agent Cole, she announced, her tone crisp and professional. Vale's head snapped toward her, eyes narrowing. Recognition. Surprise. A flicker of something unreadable. You're assigned to me? He asked, voice a mix of curiosity and mild amusement. Yes, Mira said, keeping her gun trained on the intruder who was now writhing in Vale's grasp. Threat neutralization is my primary directive. Vale released the man, who scrambled backward, finally bolting toward the corridor. Mira's eyes followed him for a moment before returning to Vale. I see, he said quietly. So my shadow finally has a name. Mira lowered her weapon slightly. Your shadow? I'm here to protect you, not spy on you. He raised an eyebrow, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. Protect me. Right. And here I thought you were just another night owl enjoying the view. Her cheeks warmed slightly at the teasing, but she masked it with professional coolness. I prefer to call it efficient oversight. Vale chuckled softly, a low, intoxicating sound that sent an unexpected thrill through her. Efficient oversight. I like that. But I'll warn you, this city has teeth, and even your efficiency might not be enough. I don't doubt it, she said. But inside, her heartbeat betrayed her calm exterior. For a moment, the two of them stood there, eyes locked. The city sprawled behind them, silent witnesses to the quiet tension between protector and CEO. Then Vale finally broke the stare, turning back toward the panoramic window. Well, he murmured, let's see if your efficiency can keep up with a night like this. Mira's pulse quickened, not from danger this time, but from the unspoken electricity in the air. For the first time, she realized protecting him would be more complicated than any mission she'd ever faced. Not because of threats outside, but because of the man in front of her. And she wasn't sure either of them was ready for the fire that was already sparking between them. The city streets glistened under the rain, reflecting neon lights like fractured glass. Mira crouched in the back seat of a sleek black SUV, eyes scanning the shadows outside. Her fingers tapped lightly on the edge of her holster, anticipation prickling through every nerve. Vale sat beside her, calm and poised, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. For someone constantly chased by deadlines and deals, he had the remarkable ability to look relaxed even in danger. Mira, on the other hand, had learned long ago that danger never allowed relaxation. The tailing drone appeared first, a black, unmarked machine hovering silently above a side street. Mira spotted it immediately, her instincts snapping into high gear. We have company, she murmured. Vale didn't flinch. I noticed. Mira blinked. He saw it too. He wasn't just a CEO. That much was undeniable. She leaned forward, voice low. They're fast, but we can lose them in the alleys by the river. Vale nodded, gripping the wheel with practiced precision. Lead the way. The SUV sped down rain-slick streets, tires cutting through puddles. Mira scanned every window, every reflection, tracking the black drone weaving through the night. It wasn't just surveillance, it was aggressive, programmed to harass and intimidate. She turned to Vale. Do you always travel alone at this hour? He smirked faintly, one hand still on the wheel. Only when the deal requires discretion. The city sleeps, the cameras rest, and the streets are mine to navigate. But apparently, discretion has its price. Mira's lips twitched. He's dangerously charming. She forced herself to focus. That drone isn't just for observation. Someone wants you stopped, or worse. Vale glanced at her, his eyes reflecting amusement and a touch of concern. And yet here you are, my shadow, ready to intervene. Her jaw tightened. Exactly. No distractions. He raised an eyebrow. No distractions, huh? The faint edge in his tone made her pulse quicken. The SUV took a sudden sharp turn into an alley, tires squealing lightly. The drone followed, but Vale's maneuvering caused it to wobble, its sensors catching glare from neon signs. Keep your head down, Mira shouted, ducking instinctively. Vale leaned forward, gripping the wheel. You're awfully tense for someone who's supposed to be neutralizing threats. Mira shot him a glare, but her pulse betrayed her controlled exterior. Because the threat is real. And it was. From the shadows, two figures emerged. Men in black, weapons raised, moving with deliberate efficiency. Mira's heart skipped. She drew her weapon in one smooth motion, crouching behind Vale's door. Let me handle this, Vale said calmly. Mira's brow furrowed. Handle this? In a fluid, lightning-fast movement, Vale exited the vehicle. Within seconds, he had disarmed one of the attackers, twisting the man's arm behind his back. The other lunged, but Vale pivoted, sidestepped, and delivered a precise strike that sent him sprawling. Mira stepped out, weapon raised, scanning for additional threats. Are we clear? Vale returned to the SUV, smirking faintly. For now. But the night is young. Her pulse raced, not from relief, but from the adrenaline, and something else, an undeniable awareness of him, of the power and danger intertwined in his every movement. The SUV continued down the waterfront streets. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the tension in the air was palpable. Mira kept her eyes on the rearview mirror, noting shadows that might indicate more pursuers. Vale leaned back, voice calm but carrying that subtle intensity that drew her in. You move well, he said, almost conversationally. Mira blinked. I'm a trained agent. That's my job. He gave a faint, teasing smile. I'm not questioning your skill. I'm questioning everything else. Her lips parted, and for a moment, she didn't respond. The storm inside her, discipline battling desire, was as relentless as the rain outside. Vale's eyes met hers, lingering. Don't let me be a distraction. Her pulse thundered in her ears. I'm focused, she said, more firmly than she felt. As the night deepened, the streets twisted and turned, the pursuit intensifying. Mira and Vale moved as a silent team, instincts aligned in a rhythm neither had anticipated. Trust was forming, unspoken but undeniable. And yet, with every glance, every near miss, the tension between them grew. Professional boundaries blurred, flirtation laced with danger, desire simmering just beneath the surface. Somewhere ahead, another shadow moved, a new threat emerging from the darkness. Mira gritted her teeth, weapon at the ready. Vale's hand brushed hers briefly as they maneuvered through a tight turn, and for a heartbeat, the world seemed to stop. This was more than a pursuit. It was a test of trust, of control, and of the fire that neither of them could ignore. The city's skyline shimmered with neon reflections as Vale pulled the black SUV into a secluded parking garage. The smell of rain and asphalt mingled with the faint scent of leather and exhaust. Mira followed, tense, scanning every corner and shadow. Danger lingered, but so did something far more unpredictable, the tension between them. Stay close, she murmured, her voice low, professional. Yet the way she said it carried more than instruction. It was instinct, habit, and something else she wasn't ready to name. Vale glanced at her, his expression calm, unreadable, yet there was a spark in his eyes that made her pulse quicken. You're tense, he said lightly. I'm alert, she replied, keeping her tone steady. Professional. She didn't look at him, but a small shiver ran down her spine at the proximity of his arm brushing hers as he reached for the door handle. They moved silently through the garage, their footsteps echoing against the concrete walls. Vale's destination was a private elevator hidden behind a service door, granting access to the top floor of a corporate skyscraper. Only a select few knew of its existence. Only a select few could enter without triggering alarms. Mira's eyes flicked to the cameras and sensors, noting angles and blind spots. Her protective instincts flared. Someone knew Vale's movements tonight, and whoever it was, they weren't just interested in observation. When they reached the elevator, Vale swiped a keycard with practiced ease. Confidential meeting. Midnight. No interruptions, he muttered, almost to himself. Mira's eyes narrowed. Do you always meet under cover of darkness? Vale shrugged, a half-smile playing on his lips. Some deals are safer in shadows. Others, just more interesting. Mira blinked at the casual inflection in his voice, noting the faint teasing edge. She shifted her weight, trying to suppress a reaction that went beyond professional. The elevator doors opened onto a polished marble floor, walls bathed in soft ambient light. At the end of the corridor, a single conference room stood illuminated, glass walls reflecting the city lights. Vale stepped forward, Mira following closely, senses heightened. Inside, two men awaited him. Investors, powerful and dangerous. Their smiles were polite but cold, and the subtle glances they exchanged hinted at hidden agendas. Mira recognized the type immediately. Ambitious, calculating, willing to gamble with lives for profit. Vale greeted them with calm, measured courtesy. "Gentlemen, thank you for arriving at this hour. Let's make this quick and mutually beneficial." Mira's eyes swept the room. Every movement, every subtle gesture, screamed that these men were not just here to negotiate, they were testing boundaries. And that meant she had to be ready. Minutes into the meeting, the tension escalated. One of the investors leaned forward, smirking. "We understand, Mr. Vale, that this merger requires trust. But trust must be earned. Are you willing to make sacrifices?" Vale's eyes flicked toward Mira briefly, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. She nodded imperceptibly, fingers brushing the edge of her concealed weapon. "Sacrifices are inevitable," Vale replied smoothly. "But loyalty, intelligence, and discretion are non-negotiable. I don't gamble with anything less." The room seemed to shift. Eyes sharpened. Words became knives. Mira's heart raced, tension pulling tight like a drawn bowstring. She noticed a faint signal on her wrist monitor. Unauthorized network access. Someone was trying to infiltrate Vale's secure communications, and they were already inside the building. Before she could act, Vale subtly shifted, blocking her view with his stance. "Gentlemen," he said, voice calm, commanding. "I'd appreciate if we keep this professional. Any deviation will be handled accordingly." Mira's pulse quickened. He's trained, she thought. Not a single hint of fear, only controlled precision. The investors froze, reassessing, realizing Vale was no ordinary CEO. Mira's respect, and a flicker of something she hadn't expected, spiked. This man could handle himself in a boardroom and in danger alike. Suddenly, the lights flickered. A hum, low and unnatural, filled the room. Mira's eyes narrowed. Someone was tampering with the building's power grid. An external intrusion. "Stay behind me," Vale said softly. His tone held a quiet authority that made Mira obey without hesitation. The conference table exploded outward with a controlled shockwave. Panic erupted. Papers flew, alarms blared, and the investors dove for cover. Mira moved instinctively, covering Vale as another intruder, masked, agile and armed, entered the room. Vale and Mira moved as one. He disarmed the first assailant with a swift motion, while she neutralized the second with calculated precision. Their movements were synchronized, a silent language of trust and protection forming under pressure. When the chaos subsided, Mira's chest heaved. She looked at Vale, their eyes locking for a moment too long. The world outside the conference room faded, just the two of them, adrenaline coursing, boundaries dissolving. Vale's hand brushed hers as he handed her back her weapon. "You're efficient," he said softly, almost a whisper. Mira's lips parted, caught between professionalism and something else entirely. "I could say the same about you," she replied, her voice steady but her pulse betraying her. The room was quiet now, empty of threats, yet Mira felt a heat rise where their hands had touched. Something unspoken had sparked, an attraction neither of them could deny, forged in danger and adrenaline. As they exited the building, Vale glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "I hope you know," he said softly, "this night isn't over." Mira met his gaze, her own eyes steady. "Neither am I," she said. The rain had stopped, but the storm between them had only just begun. The streets were slick with rain, reflections of neon lights scattering like fractured glass across the asphalt. Mira crouched in the back of the SUV, eyes scanning the city with razor-sharp precision. Her pulse was steady, but adrenaline hummed beneath her skin. Danger was never predictable, especially tonight. Vale drove with quiet focus. The corners of his mouth curved in that subtle, unreadable way that always unnerved her. He navigated narrow streets and alleys as if the city were an extension of himself, confident, unflappable, and utterly magnetic. "Something's off," Mira murmured, glancing at her wrist monitor. The device was picking up anomalies, encrypted signals, flickering drones, unusual traffic patterns. "They're following us. And they're clever." Vale didn't flinch. Good. The clever ones are the most interesting. His eyes flicked toward her, a teasing edge in their depth. Are you nervous? She bit back a retort, keeping her voice steady. I'm alert. That's different from nervous. Different, yes, he replied lightly, though a faint smirk tugged at his lips. But I can see it. And I like it. Mira's fingers tightened around her holster. Focus. Mira. This is a mission. The pursuit escalated quickly. A black SUV appeared in her rearview mirror, tailing them with precision. Another drone hovered overhead, scanning and recording. Mira leaned forward, whispering tactical instructions to Vale. Take the left at the next intersection. There's a service tunnel 3 blocks down. It should give us temporary cover. Vale nodded without hesitation, executing the maneuver flawlessly. The pursuing SUV hesitated for a heartbeat, then followed. Mira's pulse quickened, not just from danger but from the thrill of watching Vale work under pressure. Confident, unshakable, lethal. You're impressive, she admitted quietly, almost to herself. Vale glanced at her briefly, his eyes locking onto hers. Not as impressive as my shadow, he teased. She felt heat rise to her cheeks. I'm not your shadow, she said sharply, though her voice lacked conviction. He smirked, returning his focus to the road. Maybe not. But you're close enough. The SUV dove into the service tunnel, darkness swallowing them. Streetlights flickered as they moved deeper underground. Mira's eyes adjusted quickly, scanning every corner, every shadow. Something moved ahead, a faint flicker of light signaling a potential ambush. Up ahead, Mira whispered. They've set a trap. Vale's jaw tightened. Then we go through it together. As they entered the trap, gunfire erupted. Sparks flew as bullets ricocheted off the tunnel walls. Mira dove behind the wheel well, returning fire with precise, controlled movements. Vale maneuvered the SUV like a dancer, weaving through obstacles, keeping both of them alive. In the chaos, their hands brushed, brief, fleeting, but enough to send an unexpected jolt through her. Mira's breath caught, but she forced herself to focus. This was danger, not desire. The tunnel opened onto an abandoned dock by the river. Crates and shipping containers cast long shadows, perfect for a chase or an ambush. Mira and Vale exited the SUV, weapons drawn, moving in synchronized steps. Split up, a voice called from the shadows. Another team emerged, masked, armed, and fast. Mira felt a thrill of recognition. This was professional work. They weren't amateurs. These were highly trained operatives, likely hired to test Vale. Vale moved beside her, fluid and precise. Every motion was calculated, and Mira instinctively mirrored him, trusting his lead. They disarmed 2 assailants with near-perfect coordination, each movement building silent trust between them. In a brief pause, their eyes met. Close, intense, charged. The world around them seemed to disappear for a heartbeat. Mira swallowed hard, forcing herself to break eye contact and return to the fight. When the last operative fled into the night, Mira's chest heaved. Vale lowered his weapon, calm as ever. You're fast, he said, voice quiet, almost intimate. So are you, she replied, tension still coursing through her veins. They moved to the edge of the dock, the river reflecting the city lights like liquid glass. Mira scanned for any signs of pursuit, but the shadows were empty. Vale stood close, their shoulders brushing. You handled yourself well tonight, he said softly, almost reverently. Mira's heart skipped a beat. We handled it, she corrected, her voice steady but her pulse betraying her calm exterior. A silence settled between them, heavy with unspoken words. Danger had forced proximity, trust and cooperation, but something else was growing, undeniable and impossible to ignore. Vale's eyes lingered on hers, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. Careful, Agent Cole. The night is long, and shadows have a way of revealing more than just threats. Mira met his gaze, a small determined smile forming. Then I'll make sure I'm ready for both. The wind off the river carried the promise of more danger, and the undeniable pull between them. The penthouse conference room was perched high above the city, glass walls giving a panoramic view of neon lights that stretched to the horizon. The hum of air conditioning and the faint murmur of distant traffic were the only sounds, except for the quiet tension simmering between Mira and Vale. Vale adjusted his cufflinks, checking the arrangement of papers and devices on the polished table. "They'll be here soon," he said, voice calm, smooth, deliberate. Mira remained near the door, scanning the perimeter, her instincts razor-sharp. "I've run every scan. Entry points, exits, camera feeds. All clear for now." Vale gave her a sidelong glance, one eyebrow raised. "For now." She didn't meet his gaze. "Until someone tries to cheat the system. Which is inevitable tonight." Vale smirked faintly, amused by her precision and focus. "I like that about you. Keeps me on my toes." Her cheeks warmed, but she maintained her professional stance. "Focus. Mira. Focus on the mission." Minutes later, the guests arrived. Executives, investors, and a few mysterious intermediaries, all impeccably dressed, all eyes sharp, calculating. They greeted Vale with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Mira noted subtle glances and the micro-expressions that hinted at hidden agendas. Vale led the discussion, words smooth, confident, controlled. He navigated financial terms, partnership conditions, and risk assessments like a seasoned chess player. Mira's attention, however, was split. She monitored everyone in the room, but her gaze kept drifting to Vale, the way he handled tension, his calm in the face of subtle threats, and the quiet power radiating from him. The meeting was going smoothly, until the lights flickered. A faint hum filled the room, barely noticeable at first. Mira's eyes narrowed. "Someone's tampering with the building systems," she whispered under her breath. Vale's eyes met hers briefly, and a small nod passed between them. They both knew what to do. Before anyone could react, the lights went out completely, plunging the room into darkness. Panic rippled through the guests. Phones lit up briefly, faces illuminated by small screens, but the room remained largely shadowed. Mira moved first, drawing her weapon silently. Vale followed, unarmed but poised, using the darkness to his advantage. From the shadows, a figure lunged at the table, aiming to grab a laptop. Mira intercepted, tackling him to the ground with controlled force. Vale swung, using precise strikes to disarm another attacker emerging from the darkness. The guests screamed, chaos erupting in the room. But Vale and Mira moved in tandem, silent communication passing between them in glances and gestures. They neutralized the intruders quickly, efficiently. An unspoken trust forming in every move. When the lights flickered back on, the intruders had vanished. The guests stared at Vale and Mira, wide-eyed, a mixture of awe and fear. Vale straightened, smoothing his suit. "Everything under control," he said, voice calm, measured. Mira's chest heaved slightly, adrenaline still coursing. She looked at Vale, and for a moment, he looked back at her differently. Something softer, something more vulnerable. "Impressive," one of the executives muttered. Vale's gaze shifted to Mira, and a small private smile passed between them. "I'm lucky to have good company," he said quietly. Mira's pulse quickened at the tone of his voice, the weight behind the words. She kept her exterior professional, but inside, her heart betrayed her. Later, as the guests departed, Vale and Mira remained in the now empty conference room. He moved closer, leaning against the table near her. "You handled that well tonight," he said softly, almost a whisper. Mira's lips pressed into a thin line, holding back a reaction she couldn't control. "We handled it," she corrected, steadying her voice. Vale's eyes lingered on hers, the tension between them electric. "Yes, together," he said, voice low, intimate, and impossible to ignore. The city sprawled below them, the night alive with lights, shadows, and danger. And in that moment, Mira realized that protecting Vale was no longer just a mission. It was something far more complicated. Something that made every calculated move, every measured breath, every glance, carry a weight neither of them could deny. And as the hum of the city pulsed beneath them, the line between duty and desire blurred. The rain had returned, cold and relentless, soaking the streets as Vale and Mira moved through the city with silent urgency. The incident at the midnight meeting had triggered more than panic. It had sent a signal to someone dangerous, someone with both resources and intent. Mira stayed close to Vale as they navigated narrow alleys and side streets. Her eyes dotted to every corner, every doorway. The faintest movement, a shadow crossing a window, the distant click of boots on wet pavement, was enough to set her senses on high alert. Vale's hand brushed hers briefly as they turned a corner, a subtle contact that made her pulse spike. She swallowed hard, reminding herself, professional. Focus. Mission first. Do they always chase you like this? She asked quietly, her eyes scanning behind them. Vale smirked, glancing at her from the corner of his eye. Only when they're serious. Serious is an understatement, Mira replied, voice low, controlled, though her heart betrayed her calm exterior. A black SUV emerged from a side street ahead, its headlights cutting through the rain like knives. Mira's hand went to her holster instinctively. Vale didn't flinch, he slowed the pace, allowing the vehicle to fall in behind them. They're not just following, Mira whispered. They're preparing to intercept. Vale's jaw tightened. Then we won't make it easy for them. Mira's breath caught. That tone. That calm under pressure. It's dangerous. And it's magnetic. The pursuit became a deadly dance. Vale led them through winding streets, over bridges slick with rain, under flickering neon signs. The SUV tailing them matched every turn, relentless, precise. Mira fired a flare from her wrist device, momentarily blinding the vehicle's sensors. Vale took the opportunity to slip into a narrow tunnel, the rain hammering down around them. Their movement was seamless, silent understanding forming in each step, each calculated action. You move well together, Vale remarked quietly, his voice carrying just enough for her to hear. Professional training, Mira replied, keeping her tone neutral, though her pulse raced at the sound of his proximity. Vale chuckled softly. Don't lie to me, Agent Cole. I see more than just your training. She felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she didn't stop moving. Focus. They emerged from the tunnel into an abandoned warehouse district, shadows stretching long across the cracked pavement. The SUV blocked the far exit, forcing them to choose another route. Mira assessed the situation quickly, calculating the risks. Through the loading docks, she said, motioning toward a series of rusted containers. It's narrow, but we can use it to our advantage. Vale nodded, trusting her judgment. They moved swiftly, silently, slipping between the containers, their bodies brushing against each other in close quarters. Every touch, every glance, was charged with tension. Unspoken, undeniable. As they reached the final container, the pursuers were waiting. Two figures emerged, weapons drawn, blocking their escape. Mira and Vale froze for a heartbeat, assessing their options. Go left on my mark, Vale whispered, his breath warm against her ear. Mira's heart thundered, her mind sharp. Ready. Vale counted silently, then sprinted forward, drawing one attacker's attention. Mira followed immediately, disarming the second with precise efficiency. They moved as one, instinctive and synchronized, every motion a testament to trust forged in danger. When the last attacker fell, Mira and Vale paused, chest heaving, rain soaking their clothes. The night was silent, save for the sound of dripping water and their racing hearts. Vale turned to her, eyes dark and intense. You've saved me more than once tonight. Mira met his gaze, trying to steady her racing pulse. We saved each other. A brief moment of silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken thoughts and desires. The danger hadn't ended, but for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to just the two of them, standing in the shadows of the city. Vale's hand brushed hers again, lingering slightly longer than necessary. Mira felt the heat rise in her chest, and she knew this was no longer just about the mission. The shadows had become more than a refuge. They were a crucible, forging trust, tension, and a connection neither could deny. The penthouse apartment overlooked the city, lights sparkling like a million tiny stars. Mira leaned against the window, her reflection merging with the neon glow outside. Her chest still throbbed from the chase through the rain-soaked streets, and adrenaline had left her both exhausted and wired. Vale entered behind her, closing the door quietly. He didn't speak at first, letting the tension hang in the air, palpable and unyielding. You're quiet, Mira said, forcing her voice to remain steady, professional. Vale's eyes lingered on her, dark and unreadable. I'm considering my options. She tilted her head, wary. Options. He stepped closer, the faint scent of his cologne filling the room. You've done well tonight. More than well, actually. But I'm wondering how long we can keep pretending this is just a professional arrangement. Mira's pulse quickened, her fingers tightening slightly on the edge of the window sill. She couldn't meet his gaze for a moment, not because she was hiding anything, but because his proximity made her heart betray her. "I'm here to protect you," she said, her voice firm, though it wavered slightly. "Nothing more." Vale tilted his head, a slow smirk forming. "Is that what you tell yourself? Or what you want me to believe?" Mira's breath caught. "Focus. Mira. This isn't the time." The rain began to patter against the glass, a soft rhythm that filled the silence. Vale moved closer, and for a heartbeat, the distance between them was nothing. Just two people standing in the quiet tension of the night. "You're good," he murmured, voice low, intimate. "Better than I expected. Strong, smart, dangerous." Her lips parted slightly, caught between denial and the undeniable pull she felt toward him. "I'm trained," she said, almost as if repeating it could make it true. "And yet," Vale whispered, stepping even closer, "you make me want to forget everything else. Forget the rules. Forget the mission." Mira's chest tightened. She could feel the warmth radiating from him, smell the faint leather of his suit, and hear the quiet beat of her own heart rushing in tandem with his presence. "You're reckless," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "I prefer to think of it as honest," he replied, his hand brushing hers for just a moment, enough to send a spark through her nerves. The tension was broken only by the soft ping of her wrist device. A signal alert. Danger hadn't disappeared. It had only paused. Mira stepped back, regaining her professional composure. "Mission first," she said firmly, though her voice trembled slightly. Vale's eyes softened, a flicker of something unguarded showing through. "Of course. Always." But as they turned toward the laptop and the incoming threat, Mira realized something terrifying and exhilarating at once. She didn't want to step back. Not entirely. Not from him. Later, on the rooftop of the penthouse, the city stretched endlessly below them. Vale and Mira crouched behind a parapet, scanning the streets for the latest wave of intruders. The danger was real, the night alive with threats, but now there was something else in the air. Vale leaned closer, his shoulder brushing hers. "We make a good team," he said quietly, almost conversationally. Mira glanced at him, feeling heat rise in her chest. "We do," she admitted softly, unable to deny it. For a heartbeat, they stayed like that, shoulder to shoulder, their closeness undeniable. The world around them, the threats, the city, the rain, faded. There was only this charged silence between them, a line they had both been dancing around all night. Vale's hand lingered near hers. "I know we shouldn't," he began, voice low, "but I can't ignore this anymore." Mira swallowed, torn between duty and desire. Her fingers brushed as accidentally, or perhaps deliberately, and the spark between them ignited. The line had been crossed, not yet in action, but in acknowledgement. In recognition. They both knew what it meant. And neither of them could turn back now. The city below was alive with lights and shadows, but the penthouse felt like a world apart. Silent, tense and brimming with danger. Mira crouched behind a low console, weapon drawn, scanning every reflection, every flicker of movement. Vale stood beside her, calm, precise, eyes sharp and calculating. They had tracked the mastermind behind the attacks to this location. A former operative with grudges, resources, and a thirst for revenge. The final confrontation was imminent, and neither of them could afford mistakes. "Ready?" Vale asked, his voice low, almost intimate. Mira's eyes met his. For a moment, the weight of the night, the chases, the threats, the tension between them, settled into that gaze. "Always," she said, though her chest still raced. Vale nodded, and together, they moved toward the source of the threat, every step synchronized, instincts aligned. The intruder emerged from the shadows, a sleek figure armed and confident, a cruel smirk on his face. "So the famous Vale finally has a bodyguard," he sneered. "I wondered who would protect you. And I see it's more than just muscle." Vale stepped forward, his calm aura cutting through the tension. "You underestimated me. And her." Mira felt a thrill of adrenaline, her hand brushing against his briefly as they flanked the intruder. Their eyes met for just a moment. No words, just understanding. The fight was a blur of motion. The intruder lunged, Vale intercepted, Mira moved to cover his flank. One by one, his attacks were neutralized. Every kick, every strike, every tactical maneuver was executed with silent coordination that only months, or in their case, a single electrifying night of instinctive trust could produce. At the edge of the rooftop, the final confrontation reached a deadly crescendo. The intruder raised a weapon, aimed at Vale. Mira dove, sliding across the wet concrete, knocking the gun aside with precision. Vale grabbed the intruder, twisting him down into submission. They stood panting, soaked from rain, adrenaline coursing through veins, the city lights reflecting in their eyes. The danger had passed, but the tension between them remained electric. Vale looked at her, hands still near hers. "You were incredible tonight," he said quietly. Mira's chest heaved. "We were incredible," she corrected, voice soft, almost lost in the hum of the city below. Their shoulders brushed, and for the first time, the professional barrier dissolved completely. Vale's hand found hers, fingers intertwining effortlessly, naturally. She didn't pull away. "You know," he murmured, voice low, intimate, "I don't regret anything tonight. Not the danger. Not the chase. Not any of it." Mira's lips curved into a small, genuine smile. "Neither do I," she admitted. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, dripping from their clothes and hair, but it couldn't wash away the connection forming between them. An unspoken promise, forged in shadows, danger and desire. Vale leaned closer, close enough that Mira could feel the warmth radiating from him. "I suppose," he said softly, "we've crossed a line tonight together." Mira's breath caught, her heart pounding. "Yes, together," she echoed. For a long moment, they stood on the rooftop, hand in hand, overlooking a city that didn't yet know how close it had come to chaos. But they knew they had survived, and in the process, discovered something far more powerful than danger. Trust, partnership, and a connection that neither could deny. The midnight sky stretched above them, full of stars and possibility. And in that quiet, fleeting peace, Mira realized that some deals weren't just made in shadows, they were made in hearts. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more original novel stories. And stay tuned, our next story is coming soon.